G'day legends and welcome back to the Fanatics Clubhouse. This is Chin Music and my name is Tom Gallop. Moses and I actually showered before this episode together. I was good enough to iron my shirt. He was not. Mo, once again, you are lowering the decorum of this esteemed podcast. What's doing, mate? You got to iron that shirt.
Mate, you turn up with glasses and you think you can start pointing fingers at who's lowering the decorum. What's going on here?
I am wearing glasses, and the reason
Where's
for that
your wand,
is
Harry?
This is our first episode where the cricket player is outnumbered by the cricket nuffies, because today we are very fortunate to have special guest Adam Spencer on the Big Brown Couch. Adam, welcome on and thanks for joining us.
On the topic of fashion, can I just say, mate, the long white socks under the light blue jeans set off the glasses perfectly. Don't listen to this guy. You look fantastic.
And Adam was, of course, a presenter on Triple J for many, many years. So as it comes to fashion, we're going to listen to him over Moises, who's also wearing pedal pushers today.
It's a full court press on me today, but that's all right. Let's push on.
Well, I don't even know, because we are, of course, former. We've played cricket together, mate, in a match that you clearly don't recall with the look you're giving me. But we've sort of. You'd have a lot of people going out saying we've played together in junior days and all that, and you wouldn't remember it, understandably. We didn't strictly. There was a charity. I think it was after some horrible bushfires, and there was a charity.
I do remember the game.
Yeah, charity 50 over game played on the SCG, and a series of celebrities and men's and women's state and test cricketers played. And I didn't play, but I was on field roaming microphone guy, running around commentating on the game from on at first slip or wherever I might be. And there's three things I remember about the game. One, Michael Parkinson, Parky, English chat show legend, who was umpiring, had told me in advance he was just going to no-ball Mark Taylor, first ball Mark Taylor bowled, because he just was still angry about when Mark Taylor had gone through the Poms years earlier. He no-balls Mark Taylor when Taylor's still got a couple of steps even into the stumps. And this ball then goes, and I can't remember who was batting, hits him on the back pad halfway up the leg, absolutely plumb in front. And Mark Taylor, who didn't take many wickets in his career, was so gutted to miss out on a wicket at a 50-over charity match for bushfires. He was ropeable. Second thing I remember was Barry Hall, big bad bustling Barry Hall from the Swans, came on to bowl to Matthew Hayden. And Haydos was just, no offence to Barry, he wasn't in much trouble, just teeing off. Just smoked him for about 3 or 4 sixes in a row. And I remember looking at Barry Hall getting increasingly frustrated, looking at Matt Hayden and thinking, buddy, if you were ever just going to nick one off and tuck the bat under the arm, I'd strongly advise it be now. If Barry Hall goes for sixes...
Is this pre- or post-boxing career?
Exactly. Right at the height of it. If Barry goes for 6 consecutive sixes here, he's not going to be happy. And the third thing was, Elise Perry was batting. You were fielding out at square leg. I was loitering around that area. Can't remember who was bowling. Pez just rocks back and absolutely flat bats it, bang, and it's coming out, and you start moving towards it. I've got the microphone, and I shout out, I've got it, I've got it. And I'm positioning myself. I then realise I've got a microphone in my hand, and in the time I sort of drop the microphone and already start thinking, I'm going to snaffle this and just run a lap of the oval, commentating on myself as I go, that was enough confusion to drop an absolute dolly. And I can still remember you looking at me with this look of intense disappointment at this absolute marshmallow that I dropped from Elise Perry at square leg at the SCG.
Moe doesn't deal well with drop catches.
No.
I thought, you know what happened that game? Elise Perry got me out in that game. I thought you were going to talk about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I got 60 off about 20 balls, and then she came on to bowl, and I hit one straight up in the air, and I can't remember who took the catch, but I thought once you started talking Elise Perry...
No, it was not me.
Definitely not you, Adam.
I can assure you it wasn't me.
But she got me out in the game.
Elise Perry, great friend of the show, big fan of the show. Adam, you've been a big supporter of women's cricket for many, many years. Obviously, in the last 5 years, it's got a lot more coverage than it previously did. But I believe were you the first ambassador of women's cricket in Australia?
Yeah. So my thing with women's sport goes back quite a way. When I was on the Jays, and I was doing a shift by myself at that stage, and I thought we should just have a weekly sports report on breakfast, which wasn't a particularly Triple J thing to do, but it's where I wanted to take it. And so the ABC offered me a few people who could come and do sports on my show each week, and it was just this parade of 55-year-old blokes who just wanted to come on and talk about rugby league results from the weekend, and I knew that would just not fly on the Jays. And I happen to know Liz Ellis, the then Australian netball captain, and I asked her if she wanted to come and have a chat. So I actually inadvertently created the media beast that is Liz Ellis, and she'd come on and we'd just talk silly stuff, and it'd be a 10-minute segment, and after about 8 minutes we'd say, look, we should probably talk some sports results. And it flew from there. But I remember one time Liz was on, and I can't remember which Australian, I think I can remember which Australian cricketer it was, but I won't name them in case I've got it wrong. But a high-profile Australian cricketer in a one-day match had mumbled under his breath and called an umpire an idiot or something like that, and been fined 2/3 of his match fee, which was $7,000. And Liz just said at the time on the show that she could count on one hand the number of women she knew who, playing for Australia netball in their career, had made the amount of money that cricketer had just been fined for calling an umpire an idiot. And that moment just hit me. And so we always champion trying to get more of the women's sport out there. And in the 50-over Women's World Cup in Australia, I think 2008, I was the Aussie ambassador for the girls then, it was when Karen Rolton was at the end of a spectacular career. Elise Perry was just starting. Girls underperformed slight. I think they've won every World Cup they've been in since the one I was the ambassador for. But it was great. Yeah, the 50-over game was just starting to really bite with the women in Australia then. And it's been wonderful to watch the last few years.
Unreal. One thing that I love to do before we get guests on is read often the Crick Info profile of that player. Unfortunately, you don't have one of those.
No.
Or the Wikipedia page.
Adam doesn't have one after that half game, the half commentary game.
Catches 0 asterisks.
But there's often some pretty funny grabs that come out of reading these things. And for you, my favourite was the Eddie Maguire of edgy cultural events. I don't know if you've read that before about yourself, but someone did once describe you as that. And I was thinking that you can pretty comfortably sit in shows like this one that are very sporting focused. You could probably go and sit on Freakonomics or something like that with your mathematics background. And then intimidating for us is that you're also a comedian. And I listened to your episode of The Batuta Advocate, which was a couple of years ago.
Could host Millionaire if I really
Potentially,
could host the hot seat if
exactly.
needed. Yeah.
So you actually could do Eddie Maguire's job as well, and I don't think he could traverse those spaces as well as you can. For you, if you were to sit on one of those three categories, sport, comedy, or I guess science, mathematics, the smarter side of these things, where are you most comfortable?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the thing for me that I've enjoyed most in the sort of very unpredictable, non-straight line public media career I've had is that I don't really fit nicely into any box. I often, when I try and explain, I don't consider myself a comedian as in I'll do 25 minutes of, hey, men and women, bit different, aren't they? So not my thing, right? If you want someone to do 20 minutes at your work Christmas party and you reach out to me, I will say, I've got Dave Hughes' number. I'll give it to you. He'll crush that. But if someone reaches out to Hughesy and says, we've got a big conference on cybersecurity, it's going to be a bit boring. We need someone to MC it and ask this international guest. We've got some fun stuff about life behind it. Hughesy will say, oh, mate, you give Spence a call, right? I like to say, smarter than the funny guys, funnier than the smart guys. Just sort of floating around in that ambiguous grey area. Love my sports. And the fun thing with doing it at the ABC has always been there's a bit of a strain of thought at the ABC that if you're cool and sophisticated and intellectual, you can't like sport. And I've always loved pushing back against that because sport is just exactly the same human experience and human story as opera, as movies, as all of the arts. It's just exactly that same human experience. You'd know that from both inside the arena or watching on.
Yeah, it's amazing that you say that, Spence, because I'm currently doing my MBA at the moment and learning a lot of stuff about the corporate world and I guess meeting people in around the university, and some of the lingo or the cliches are exactly the same. Yeah. So whether it's high sport or corporate, teamwork and how to treat people, they
getting the best out of a group of people when they're under stress, manufacturing a relationship with people where you can be, if necessary, really honest in your feedback to someone because they've let everyone down without bruising them for life. That's just as important in a workplace situation as it is in a dressing room. And the highs and the lows of a last-second win and coming back against the odds, that happens in all human stories.
Yeah, exactly right. And I've been surprised through this journey of how similar or how fine a line the differences are between the two. So, I guess once you relate that to arts as well, and the high pressure stakes that a lot of the arts do have to perform under, I think a lot of the individuals in those would feel a similar pressure. Not that I've ever been in that, but I can definitely relate to the feeling or the anxiety of feeling like I've got to do something really well here. Otherwise I could lose my job.
Could you ever do? I remember seeing Michael Bevan on The Masked Singer. Have you got that in the toolkit?
Please cue that footage, Hugo, as well. That is ridiculous.
No, unfortunately, no singing on dancing for me in front of anybody.
In front of anybody. Hello.
On cricket specifically, you once described as an exercise in statistics with skills wrapped around it. Moe, we've spoken a bit in the past, particularly around 2020 when we're in the Big Bash season, about how you guys are more and more every season employing numbers. You're looking at when to take the power surge, when to use certain bowlers against certain batsmen, because you know the way that will likely play out. And obviously people have followed Moneyball in the US, and then I think in US sports one by one after it started in baseball, the use of statistics is becoming more and more prevalent. Adam, in terms of your following of sport, the Swans, you're a big Swans fan, and then also cricket. How much are you viewing it with a mathematical eye, and how much are you understanding the likelihood of a team winning based on, say, previous stats?
It is fascinating, and it is the holy grail for all clubs in all sports is to know what those numbers mean. And it is sometimes funny how ridiculously over-statistized it can become. And the AFL that I follow quite closely, the AFL media machine, just constantly needs to churn out material, and your team can be having an absolute dog of a season. But if they show that your improvement on transition from back 50 to forward 50 in non-scoring attacking position, you've gone from 18th to 13th in the league, that just gives you a little kick and gets you through the next couple of days and lets you forget the fact that you were belted by 11 goals on the weekend. I'm interested to know yours, mate, because are you at risk of being over-staticized, or will you take as much data as you can get, both individual and team?
So it's a great question. I think it really depends on the individual. So, I mean, the data and the information, there's a flow of it. I still think the statistics we gather in elite cricket is outdated, I think, now. So I think some of the traditional statistics that we try to use, especially for T20 cricket, probably isn't as relevant as it may be for Test cricket. Things like averages, and just having a flat out, average and strike rate. I think in T20 cricket it's not the ideal thing to be measuring a player's effectiveness, and then as well as economy rate and bowling average. I mean, you only have to look through the spin bowlers' economy rates versus fast bowlers' economy rates in T20 cricket, and you'll see there's probably, on average, a difference of 2, maybe, in the economy rates, and that's basically because spin bowlers don't bowl in the surge or power play, or at the death, and fast bowlers do. So I think there needs to be a twist put on these statistics and how we gather statistics to understand context as much as possible during the game.
And I presume at any given time, and you don't need to name names, but at any given time in any given team you're in, if you were presented with everyone's stats, there's probably one person in the team who you'd say, wow, his numbers flatter him a fair bit, to be honest. And there'd be another one you're going, I don't care that that's what those numbers are. I would not drop this guy under any circumstances.
There's always that. There's always that where you're like, oh, I'm surprised by that, or I'm surprised that guy's numbers are that good. Or like, someone might score runs in games where their team's already sort of, they're 5 for shit, and then they've come in and they get to sort of take their time, repair their innings, but the game's already done type thing. And then there's guys when they're 5 for shit and they're in their batting, and you're like, or someone like a Glenn Maxwell, you're like, we need to get him out, otherwise this game's, we're going to lose this game. So
because some of the Barmy Army were a couple of days into the recent Sri Lanka tour, sledging the Aussies online, going, oh, this is just a stats padding exercise, getting your numbers up, boys, and that sort of stuff. For any English cricket fan to suggest there's stats padding going on in the world game is just the most... Yeah. I mean, how blind do you have to be to your own reality to not realise that England just pad their stats relentlessly. The moment they're placed under any pressure by anyone, they fold like a group of daisies, and then they just keep padding the stat, and you suddenly get the, Joe Root, greatest batsman ever. Except, if it ever matters. If you're listening, Joe.
Listening to you speak, obviously, quite passionately against English cricket leads me to another question which I'd kind of prepared before, which I listened to you talking about AFL and heard that the only time that you dabble in sports betting, because I wanted to kind of go down to how can I actually arbitrage the sports betting market with some proper stats, which you might be able to help me with.
Sure.
But you said the only time you have a bet is actually on the other team, so that if your team loses, you walk away with something.
Yeah, I started this once in 2012. The Swans are through to the preliminary final. Whoever wins this is off to the grand final. We're playing out at Homebush against Collingwood. We've had the week off. Collingwood, it's going to be pretty impressive if they can beat us. We are somewhere between solid and raging hot favourites. And as I was walking into the game, there was one of those big betting screens, and Collingwood were paying $3.80, right? In a two-team game involving two of the best four teams in the comp from that year, in a game where any night anything can happen. And I remember thinking, I desperately want Sydney to win this. If we don't win it, I'd really like to walk home with $1,000 in my pocket. I'm going to bet $320 on Collingwood. We smashed them. I've never been so happy. I will happily pay any day of the week $320 to watch Collingwood lose and for us to go through to a grand final. And I was exactly as you said. I was just emotionally arbitraging myself so that if it hurt, I'd get a bit of money back. Similarly, last year's grand final where the Swans did not perform as well as they should have against the Brisbane Lions.
They certainly did not.
Didn't hurt me quite as much as it would have if I didn't have a bet on the Lions at the time.
So you're not in you're not in a room with a whiteboard running stats that we don't know about, actually picking out places where the bookies are getting it wrong.
One of the guys that I did my honours year in mathematics at the University of Sydney back in the 1990s, hello ladies, and you had to write a major essay as part of your honours program, and I wrote something on, there's a famous maths theorem called Fermat's last theorem, and I wrote mine on 18th century attempts to solve this theorem and some of the interesting mathematics that came out of that. A buddy of mine who was there wrote his on the changing odds in various game stages of Caribbean stud poker. And that was basically his audition piece. He now works with that famous Australian gambling syndicate, David Walsh, who set up Mona in Hobart, etc. He works with them now. So he's a professional. And the way those guys consider it, it's not gambling, it's just investing. The way you do that sort of stuff, whether it's sport or anything else, if you do actually want to make money, you need to be highly informed. You need a large amount of money because you're not guaranteed to win an individual match or hand or anything. But if a game that's normally paying 52% to the casino, 48% to you, and you're just betting $10 a hand, and because there haven't been many aces or whatever, it swings and it's suddenly paying 60% to you, and you start betting $500 a hand, if you can play enough hands, you will get your investment back with a lot more. That's investing, as opposed to just going, yellow's my favourite colour, let's put it all on West Coast or something like that.
I'm a true sucker for names. If I'm ever at the races, I don't go to the races often, but when I do, I'm always betting on names.
Yeah, that's why the Melbourne Cup always pays so much. You look at the trifecta for the Melbourne Cup, it's always an outlandish amount of money because people are just betting on their favourite colour, names, favourite numbers, and the pot's all over the place in terms of informed betting. So something's going to come second or third paying a lot more than it should because people just didn't like that colour on the day.
If there's a Melbourne Cup horse this year called Moises Moustache, then I'm on it. $500 each way.
That's a great name for a horse, I think, actually.
Yeah, look, sitting from where I am, Moises Moustache goes out hard early, finds it a bit of heavy going, and might come up a bit short.
I don't think it's going to win any races, unfortunately.
We recorded late last week, and then we had a coffee the next day because you had a bit of a beard the last time we recorded. And
big
then
beard, yeah.
Then the next day, it was Moises Moustache.
Yeah, I got rid of everything but the stash. So, it looks like I've grown a moustache really quickly, but I haven't. It's just that I got rid of everything but the moustache.
How's that been received in the playing group? Popular? Or would any of the young kids say if they didn't like it?
No, the moustaches are back. Would you believe it, Spence?
Okay.
There's a few young kids trying to rock a moustache. So when I turned up today at training with the moustache, they were like, "Oh, that looks sick, man."
It's got a little bit of that and the way the hair is. There's a little bit of late career Richard Hadley.
Oh, there you go.
which you think you'd take. But
My theory is actually...
maybe I'll start bowling again.
Speaking of bowling, as I was leaving the gym before, where I'd seen you, as I mentioned before, Sam Constas was walking in. He's had that little moustache for a while. I've got a theory that maybe you've actually, the 20-year-older player has copied him, got in his slipstream. But I also, while I was on the treadmill, watched you guys tussling in the nets. It looked like there was a bit of heat, a bit of a fiery exchange going on there. I reckon you might have got him out, but I reckon he hit you a couple of times pretty convincingly.
I'm surprised you noticed that, Tom, because I certainly did get him out. And he nicked one to second slip, and then for the next 6 balls, he just continued to run at me and hit me over my head for 6. So that's a good 36 runs you've scored in from the change room there. But it's nice. It's nice to see you play your shots after you got out. So.
Jack Edwards pulls up sore tomorrow after the warm-up. Any chance of you seeing you with the red ball in hand tomorrow at the SCG?
No, not tomorrow, unfortunately. My hands are currently they get a bit rashy when the colour red hits them.
We were chatting before you started recording about training. Wazza was very interested about what goes on at training. Day before a Shield game, is there anything special that happens at training? Is it normal? Talk us through what that looks like for New South Wales the day before a game.
Well, today was we turned up. We split up into our, I guess, specific groups. So bowlers off into a bowlers meeting, batters off into a batters meeting, and then we discuss, I guess, the individuals' plans against the opposition that we're going to face. So the batters, the 6 or 7 batters that are in the team, will discuss, the opposition bowlers and how, what their plans are going to be to combat their bowlers, and then the same the other way, where our bowlers will meet together and discuss the opposition batters and any plans that aren't, let's bowl at the top of off with the odd bouncer. Again, we use the statistics that we have, the data that we have.
During this stage, wicketkeeper just sitting by himself doing the crossword, wishing he had friends.
The wicketkeeper's in with the batters, believe it or not. But yeah, the spin bowlers tend to. Yeah, when we're playing at the SCG, you usually have 2 in the squad, so they'll break off together with another assistant coach and discuss, what they need to discuss. I've never sat in a spin bowlers meeting before. Well, I've gone over, obviously being a captain, you want to be across, all the strategies in the team. But a lot of those discussions I have are a lot more one-on-one with everybody. But yeah, I guess in those meetings, you end up talking a lot about, an opposition's batter might, 50% of their dismissals out of their last 30 innings have been LBW. And the obvious thing would be to think, let's bowl straighter. But then it's about digging a little deeper. What were the 6 balls leading up to the LBW? Were they bounces? Were they hanging it out wide and getting their front foot across and then coming in? Or are we just bowling straight every ball? So
there's that famous one where it was Warney said in that World Cup match about Herschel Gibbs, stand your ground, because sometimes he throws the ball almost before it's touched his hands, and I don't think it's a legal catch and all that sort of stuff, and it happened and you dropped the World Cup. Are there any players in your group more likely to be a little bit nuffy and have some real nice, insightful gem? Do you or is it all just spoken to you by training staff, or are there some guys in the squad, if they say something, you'll really listen?
No, there's definitely a lot of what you were talking about before in terms of, betting with data and statistics, or betting with emotion, or anecdotal data, as we like to call it. And the anecdotal stuff tends to come from the playing group, where the statistics comes from, the analysis, the guys that are employed with the analysis, and that stuff's very boring. We want the anecdotal data, the anecdotal information, which, guys like Steve Smith, they're usually, they're really good for that sort of stuff. I remember before the Big Bash game this year, Sydney Sixers played the Strikers. We're at Adelaide Oval. Matt Short has dominated us in the last 3 or 4 games in a row. We had this plan to Matt Short to bowl wide with a deep point and a deep mid wicket. And sort of make him trying to fetch it from outside. And he goes, nah, just go 2 on the offside and bowl even wider, basically at the wide line. Don't worry about channel, just go really wide. And just like make him hit it across the line from there. He'll hit one straight up in the air especially if you can move the ball away a little bit. So I've gone, you know what? That actually sounds like a pretty good plan. And because he's smacking it anyway, so if he smacks it, you're like, oh, well, he's going to smack us anyway. Might as well try it. Jack Edwards goes out in this game. First 5 balls have gone for 4 runs with a I think a no ball or a wide in it, and then on the 6th ball of the over, hits one straight up in the air, and Steve Smith's little stroke of genius has paid off. Unfortunately, we tried to do the same thing to Mitch Owen the next week.
How'd that go?
That didn't work so well.
I got so caught up in Moses' unironed shirt when we were talking outfits that I'd been remiss to, firstly, a nod to the Australian cricket team with the Waddle yellow shirt. Yeah. But the jacket is here, the famous cricket ball jacket, which anyone who's been to a cricket function in Sydney probably would have seen at some point. Talk us through the jacket.
There's a place called Skin Deep that make jackets. They never pay me for saying that, but that is the name of the jacket. I was walking through town, this is 20 years ago now, and it's in the early days of advanced laser printing. So these guys would make these lairish jackets that might be covered in pineapples or puppy dogs or whatever. And I'm walking past and there's this jacket on a mannequin in the window and it's just covered in Kookaburra cricket balls. And my then girlfriend...
You didn't order this jacket?
No. It was just on this mannequin in a shop, and I walk past and I look at it and I say to my girl, I've got to try this on. And I try it on and she just looks at it and goes, fuck, you've got to buy that. You've got it. So we bought it, and I carry a Sharpie with me all the time in it. All those signatures, it's been signed by the vast bulk of Test cricketers, male or female, Australian or international, I've ever met. Men's on the front, women's on the back. It must be 20 years old. Never been dry cleaned. Never been washed for fear that I'll lose some of the signatures. These days, I've got my act together.
So it's like a baggy green.
Yeah, totally. People will write their number under it as well, so you're at least a chance. I got Lindsay Klein, I got Arthur Morris on this sort of stuff, right through. I got Alan Border, right through to some of the current day players, and it's quite possible there's a couple of people who've signed it twice, and they or I just don't remember because it's been 10 years apart.
Is it Tim Cahill?
Yeah. Yes, Tim Cahill is the one non-cricketer I got to sign this because I bumped into him very drunk once after a day of Test cricket. And
another good friend of the show.
Yeah, he'll do. He's been on this pod. Close enough. Sign away. Dougie Walters there. That sort of stuff. Have you ever whacked the?
I'm the man in front of me on the Test 431 is there, but I'm at 432. I don't think I've signed it, so I'll definitely put a scribble on that for you later, mate.
Well,
there it is. There's the Sharpie.
Mate. Let's do it right now.
I don't want to be one of those guys that have signed it twice.
No, I don't recall you having done it.
Given you can count cards, surely you can remember who signed the jacket.
Oh no, because again, like I said, I've had this signed by a couple of people in the Australian dressing room after a win at about 8 p.m. The memory's not as solid of those moments as perhaps it should be.
I was good enough to sign the shirt.
You put the 4-3-2 under it, mate, so I can.
That's the only brand new red cherry I've had in my hand this year.
There you go.
There you go. I don't get to bowl with any balls that are that new.
Do you have Bradman?
No, I did not get the Don, unfortunately. But I used to go to a cricket function each year at the SCG that Arthur Morris used to go at, and you would have met Arthur a couple of times. Just like the quintessential, like you genuinely felt you were talking to someone who played cricket with Don Bradman, and he was just the most lovely gentleman you could ever imagine. Richie Benno's on there, all the old school. Lindsay Klein, who hung on in the Thai Test in 1960, 61, right through to now. The big mode, number 432.
That was pretty special to witness. Thanks a lot for doing that, guys. Last thing, Adam, that I wanted to ask you about, ABC, Triple J,
yes.
Kind of your home away from home, I guess, for the better part of 30 years. One person that I love from the ABC, I don't think he gets enough credit for the work that he does for ABC Grandstand, is Rick Finlay, a fellow statistician.
Yes.
Have you had much to do with Rick?
I have had a little bit to do with Rick. He's such an awesome stats nerd, Rick. I wrote a series of popular mathematics books. Again, hello ladies, available online. And they were always a mixture of mathematics and also just bizarre numerical trivia. And there were a couple of things Rick helped me with for my book. You know the Aussie fear of the number 87.
Oh, we talked about this on the last podcast.
Yeah, and that's and we went through the stats of 87. He helped me. He'd written an article. I took some of that out of it, and it's actually comparatively safe number to be on compared to 89 and 88 and 86. And it probably comes from a misremembering. Bill O'Reilly, I think it might have been, said he'd seen a match at the SCG where Bradman had got out for 87, and that's where the whole myth came from. And in fact, you go back and look at the books, Bradman got out for 89 that day, not 87. So the whole 87 superstition, 1, doesn't hold up statistically, 2, is based on a misremembering. And the other one was when Stevie O'Keefe jagged back-to-back 6 for 52s in the one test. And I just hit Rick up online and said, that must be close to the best figures repeated in 2 innings of a test, because it's pretty rare, as you would know, to get the same figures. Be pretty rare to get more than 3 or 4. Because Steve O'Keefe's 6 for 52 is the best doubled up figures in the history of Test cricket, and I'd be surprised if anyone ever does that. Like, you've got to get 6 wickets to start or more, then exactly the same number of runs. Stevie O'Sock might hold on to that one for a long time.
It's going to be a tough one to beat. Talking about things that are repeating statistically, Spence. Now, you just told us a little story about walking past a jacket store and your girlfriend at the time talking you into buying the said jacket. Now, I listened to a little piece of information recently where a girlfriend talked you into going and doing your first ever comic show. So at the moment, it sounds like you should take a lot more advice from your girlfriend.
I got my
two life-changing events here.
I got my start in the first Triple J still do it. It's called Raw Comedy, Undiscovered Stand-Up Comedians. This year's going into its 30th year.
I might enter you, mate.
Back in 1996, my girlfriend at the time, realising I was going nowhere with my uni studies and that sort of stuff, enrolled me in the first Triple J Raw Comedy without even telling me, and then said, Harold Park Hotel next week, you've got to go and tell some jokes and all this. And so first year they've ever done it, standard was abysmal, so I won and met the Triple J guys, and it all sort of bounced along from there. Very good point. I'm easily influenced by intelligent women. I'll take it.
Same girlfriend?
No. They would know each other, but they were different, about a decade apart, and neither of them the person I'm currently married to. So let's talk about something else.
I asked Moe last week about numbers or things in cricket that he's superstitious about. Someone like you who views numbers differently to a layperson like Moises or I, are you superstitious about numbers, or do you just love them all?
Yeah, I'm superstitious isn't quite the word. I notice them. The first thing, numbers leap out to me far more than other things.
Do you see numbers in colours? I've always been... One of my friends refers to people like you as mathematicians.
Yeah, that's called synesthesia. Yeah, some of you are real savants do that sort of stuff. Well, they'll see numbers as shapes, and they'll calculations in their mind of these big shapes bumping into each other. I live at number 155 on my street. So when I moved in, the day I moved in, I started talking to my neighbour. She's at number 153. We've been talking for 2 minutes tops before I just blurt out, hey, your house number 153, let me tell you something. If you take the digits of that number and cube them, 1 cubed plus 5 cubed, 125, plus 3 cubed, 27, 153, equals 153. It's only 3 other 3-digit numbers that happens for, 373, 71, and 407. It's literally about the third thing I've ever said to this person. And she's just going, yeah, great, okay, and just nervously backing towards her door going, who is this fucking freak? But my favourite number is the number 4 for a lot of different reasons. And my one little superstition is if my wife and I are watching TV and we adjust the volume, has to go to a multiple of 4. There's no way my eyes can tell the difference if the brightness on a TV is 59 or 60. But if I see it's 59, she knows now. She'll just knock it up to 60. It's just got to be the universe is a lot more...
Sounds superstitious to me.
Yeah, a lot more stable for me when everything's just multiples of 4. I'm happy.
Now, I can't see it, but Hugo is very eager for me to ask you about the tattoo on your arm.
There we go.
There we go. There's numbers.
2, 2, which are multiples of 4.
2, 2, 1, 2, 2. But if you add the 2s, you looking all right there? Yeah, that's the date that Leah and I got married 3 years ago, and we were looking for a weekend in January. 29th, my birthday, can't do that. Something else, and she said, I said, what about the 22nd? And Leah said, that'd be 2, 2, 1, 2, 2. It's a palindrome, Mo. Reads the same way both ways. That's when I realised I'd made the right decision. She's a keeper.
Incredible.
Very good. Boys, time to start talking about some cricket, because it is, of course, the...
at the 45-minute mark of the pod, let's do it.
It is, of course, the first week, or this is the week where an ICC Champions Trophy is kicking off. Some big talking points. Australia have stumbled into this tournament with a convincing defeat at the hands of Sri Lanka last week. Sri Lanka won't be in the Champions Trophy, given how poorly they went in the 2023 World Cup.
That's great signs for Australia.
Beaten by the team who didn't make it.
India are humming after demolishing England. England, which Adam, we happy
India
about.
did some stats padding against England, didn't they?
Are looking very shaky. The tournament kicks off on Wednesday. I've written it down. Pakistan play New Zealand in Pakistan on Wednesday. This is, of course, the first tournament that has been held in Pakistan since the 1996 World Cup.
Since I won Raw Comedy.
Yeah,
there you go. But that is incredible when you think about it, isn't it?
It
30 years without international top-level cricket in that country.
Have you seen cricket on the subcontinent?
No, I have. It's one of my real. I was watching that Sri Lankan series this year, and whenever we go back there, I'm going. That just looked beautiful and fun, and I'd love to watch it in India or even Pakistan.
Have you played one days on the subcontinent, Moe?
The only Test cricket I've ever played is on the subcontinent, unfortunately. Well, I mean, fortunately for me, but I would have loved to have played some more Test cricket outside of the subcontinent as well. So, 3 tests in India, 1 test in Sri Lanka,
those bright red kookaburras don't come out of the handle that smoothly on the sub.
The T20s on both, and ODIs on both as well.
Interestingly, in 96, the tournament was actually split across Pakistan, India, and Sri Lanka. At the time, Australia and the West Indies refused to go to Sri Lanka because the civil war was unfolding. This time around, obviously, tensions between India and Pakistan persist, and the game between them on Sunday, which is, always the highlight of a tournament like this, will be played in Dubai. It's interesting for me because I would imagine that tournament conditions or ground conditions in Pakistan and India would be quite similar, so it makes sense to split a tournament across those two countries. But comparing Pakistan and Dubai, I was thinking surely conditions will be quite different. Moe, you've played in both those places. How do you think that'll impact the tournament, given that games are going to be split across the two?
They are different. The conditions are different, probably greater than the difference between India and Pakistan in terms of just the soil and the wicket. But in terms of the behaviour, it's still, especially in white ball cricket, it's still pretty similar. Low and slow at both. Can spin once the wickets get tired. But, we're not going to be seeing much bounce for the seamers in Dubai or Pakistan. So a lot of the behaviours are the same. But it's not the same, but similar. But I would say India and Pakistan are definitely greater in similarities than what Dubai and Pakistan would be. But having said that, you've just explained, I guess, the political tension between the two. So it does. I feel it does make sense, especially because Pakistan has played so much of their international cricket in Dubai over the last 20 years, or they've been forced to, unfortunately, because other countries haven't been able to tour Pakistan, so they've had to play them in Dubai. But it's great just to be hosting cricket in Pakistan again.
I found in the last World Cup that we won, having drifted a bit from the 50-over game myself for a while, then there was this category of games, 50 overs aside, where the pitch is doing a bit, and 220 might be a challenge to get. There were a few games in that book that were just that was my fun. I'm not that I was more excited watching that than a team successfully chasing down 360 because they probably needed 390 for that to be a par score. Whatever. But some of those knife edge games where one wicket's just going to swing it and some guy's in there fighting for his life and it's hooping. Are we going to get much of that in these conditions, in this Champions Trophy?
Again, that'll completely depend on the wicket. I would say that would more likely happen towards the back end of the tournament once the wickets do get tired. We saw that. I think we saw that well in the final of the World Cup recently with India and Australia in that final, that exact game that you're talking about. But whether we see that early, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, they had the IPL in Dubai and the par score was like 220 for a 20-over game. Yeah. And, they can make those wickets, basically like concrete, and the outfield's like concrete as well. So guys are like miss-hitting cover drives through mid-wicket, and it's racing away between sort of mid-on and square leg. No one's got a chance of chasing it down. It's like hitting the Mario Kart speed-up turbos on the way to
coming back with all the leather ripped off it. Yeah. And you had that new ball for 3 balls. Okay, good luck now.
I think exactly. David Lloyd famously did the pitch report from the car park around that time in Dubai because it was so flat.
Yeah. So I think it, as you say, I'm similar in the sense that, watching 6 or 7 and over with, one boundary and over isn't all that fun for me. But watching, a hard-fought 230 or a hard-fought 200 where the opposition, they might come out to bat and they go, we're going to get this in the first 10 overs, and they go out hard, lose a couple, and then
on.
Yeah, and then the breaks get put on, and then, then the cricket starts, I think. So
in teams where you've still got people coming in at 8 or 9 who could just hit 40 off 16 and drag it back out of the fire. Yeah.
As a fan, one-day cricket for me, the series against Sri Lanka last week, 2-game series, it's pretty low-key. I love all sport, but I find it pretty hard to get up for those one-day games. However, I feel like one-day cricket, you kind of touched on it, does come into its own for these big tournaments. I was interested to ask, I guess, both of your opinions, because, Adam, if you're going on Batuta Advocate podcast, that's a big one. How do you, it's a bit of a roundabout question here, but for a player like Steve Smith, when he knows the Champions Trophy is just around the corner, he's just done the India series in Australia, 2 big events with then a one-day series against Sri Lanka kind of in the middle. I imagine it's hard for him to get up for that. Adam, if you've got Freakonomics, Chin Music, Batuta Advocate, is it hard for you to get up for Chin Music?
Yeah, you've got to pace yourself, because also just the nerves in advance. And I've pictured this in where am I going to be sitting on the couch? What coloured socks is what does Mo look like up close? And you can visualise, you can crunch as much data on that as you want, but it's only when you're in the moment that you just have to rise and respond. And just in the back of my mind, I'm just whispering, no, just pretend you're on Batuta. Don't worry, just pretend you're on Batuta.
But Moe, for a player like Travis Head, who we all know, he gets up for the big moments, is it hard for him to get up for that 2-game series in Sri Lanka? Like, they can say what they want in front of the cameras, the players, and they always do a good job of making it seem like every game for Australia is as big as any other game for Australia. But is the nature of these things that it just naturally is harder to get up for a low-key game like that when you've got a big tournament just around the corner?
Look, I don't think it would be. I think you're looking at for me, I think we're looking at the wrong, why the Australian team didn't do as well as we expected. I don't think it's because it was, particularly hard to get up for or anything like that. I would look at the people that are playing in the team. I think they're trialling a few combinations at the moment. Plus, you take away Hazelwood, Stark, Cummins. Well, in terms of Champions Trophy moving forward, and that's the core of the bowling attack that we've become accustomed to over the years, and it's a very big change to just and obviously no Nathan Lyon. I know Adam Zampa's been a terrific white ball bowler for Australia for a long time, but it's not the same team that we see each summer here at home. We've taken Warner out of recent times in one-day cricket. So we're trialling a few different combinations, especially at the top of the order. And unfortunately for us in Sri Lanka, they haven't worked. And they haven't worked yet. We've seen some sexy 20s, but we haven't seen any sort of match-winning performances. And I think that ends up putting more pressure on the Steve Smiths and the Marnus. And then when they don't score the big score, we're like, oh, they're not getting up for it. But I think it's across all the batters in the team. Whenever you walk onto the ground and try and win a game for your team or for your country in this situation, it's not 20 or 30 that's going to win you the game. It's, the 80 plus scores, the 100 plus scores in 50 over cricket.
Can I ask a quick one? That one thing Australia is lucky enough to bring, because of a couple of years now of excellence across multiple forms of the game, is we do bring a bit of the swagger. Teams will, even if they think we're not playing as well as we can, they beware the wounded bull. You play a lot of cricket with a lot of guys from all around the world over the last few years. Where's England at? Have England you get the impression they've created this pressure upon themselves with the whole Bazball ethic, and then really underperforming, especially in the shorter forms of the game, for a while now. Are they just coming in and giving it their best in every game, or is there a sort of build-up of pressure and underperforming over a period of... Does that liberate them just to go and throw the bat around and it doesn't matter, or would they be under more pressure, another failed series, the way that might be interpreted back home, etc.?
I definitely think they'd be under more pressure now. And I think, you can dress up the environment how you like. I quite like that environment of, relaxed and freedom and back yourself. But there's always that balance of, okay, are we now is it now reckless? Is what we're doing reckless? And are we learning from our, I guess, failures in games gone past? And it's a tough balance for me because I've always been an overanalyzer or someone who suffers from paralysis through analysis, and I do chase my mistakes more than what I should have. So that's probably a team I would have loved to play in because it probably would have allowed me to play with a little bit more confidence. But having said that, I do believe there is that fine balance, and I think the best players in the world tread that line the best of, playing with freedom and playing, with courage, but then also doing what's asked from you and what the team needs you to do in that situation. So I think what they've built up, though, over the last couple of years playing this style of cricket is they've built up a bank of knowledge and data of, okay, we can go X hard. This is how hard we can go without losing a wicket. And when we go this hard, then we lose lots of them.
Tend to fall apart. Yeah.
So then they, I think it's easier to tone down than tone up. Mm-hmm. So, at least they've had a few years of playing, extremely aggressive cricket. And I think now under this, they do have to start delivering. They've got like the teams we were talking on the last podcast. You look from 1 to 11, their team is spectacular. Yeah. I would hate to be captaining against that team. I would hate to be bowling against that team because they got match winners the whole way across. So it's just a matter of them treading that, that balance or that line of, courage and reckless, or what does the team need me to do now?
There's been a heap spoken about both the English team's preparation. They got demolished by India over the last fortnight. Australia didn't go well against Sri Lanka last week, as I said before. You'd imagine that they've both been building towards Saturday, and that's the one that they really care about in both squads. Australia play England Saturday night Australian time. Big question marks around the Australian team. I think the spinners weren't great last week in Sri Lanka, and spin's going to play a big part in this tournament. Matt Short hasn't really fired in both of Australia's last two one-day series, and Fraser McGurk not going great at the top either. I saw the last time Australia won the Champions Trophy was in 2009, and Ricky Ponting, in a similar way to Steve Smith is this time, took a younger team, having had the retirement of all the champions of the decade before. Are you expecting that Steve will be pinpointing that one as well and lining up a big game against England on Saturday?
Well, it is a huge game, but I think... I'm not sure. I think Steve's going to be looking... Well, I would say the Australian team's going to be looking a little bit more internally than trying to, point out anything that's going on with the English team. I think they've got to figure out the combinations that they want to go into the tournament with, whether they are going to play two spin, whether they're going to keep going with the, I guess the young top three that are just going to go out playing, that really expansive, I guess, brand of cricket, and then just, rely on Marnus and Steve to fix up any mess, or do they put one of those two guys at the top to have a little bit more of a, I guess, traditional start, have someone bat through the innings? So I think the team needs to make a decision about what style of cricket they want to play.
One thing I haven't checked is the actual format of this tournament. Is this one where they all start, they all play each other, then you break off into Super Sixes, you split the Super Sixes in half into two groups of Super Threes, you bring back the two lowest losers from the first round, make that some fives, take away the first number you thought of, then just go bugger at Australia, India in the final? Is that how this one's rolling out?
I think Australia sure hopes so at this stage. But yeah, no, this one's a much shorter tournament. Yeah. So there's only three round games. So they're going to have to be ready to go right from the word go.
It is funny with these things where there's randomly allocated teams to two pools, and nicely for the ICC, Australia play England and India play Pakistan. So it's hard to see how random that actually is.
What are the odds?
Yeah.
I played in a Champions Trophy. And we didn't make it through to the finals. And a lot of our listeners will be saying that's because I played in it. Okay. But I'd tell you, we played in a game against Bangladesh at the Oval in England, and we bowled Bangladesh out for, I'm going to say 170. And I can't remember how many overs it takes to find a game of cricket. with a washout. But Australia, I was batting 4. We were 1 for 120 off like 15 overs, chasing 170.
Oh, no.
So
Off 14.5 overs, I'm guessing.
Or
and then
either 14.5 or like 19.5 or whatever.
Rain came.
The rain came, but we were like 50 or 60 runs ahead of where like the actual par you needed to be at that time. But because you can technically still lose wickets, you don't go in, even if you've scored more runs than what you need to be at the... And we ended up not making it through. I can't remember who we played the next game, but we ended up not making it through despite... Like we were 40 runs away from chasing their total in 20 overs or something like that.
But technically, 7 guys could have been run out off no balls, so you didn't complete the... Yeah.
It was an incredible lapse in the Duckworth Lewis system that just didn't really make sense. And it brings me to think, while we've got Adam here, that maybe we should... that maybe we should work out the new Duckworth Lewis system, the Spencer...
Henriques. The Spencer Henriques
Tom,
system.
we want you involved. We want you hosting
I think the
this.
cricketer and the mathematician would be just fine working that one out.
Because it's Duckworth Lewis Stern.
It is.
Now, isn't it? There's a third name on this.
Is there really?
It's been tweaked again, yeah.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Do you understand Duckworth Lewis?
Yes.
Is it possible to explain it to someone like us in 30 seconds?
Well, they just crunch millions of stats on previous games of every ball by ball, over by over, where
It does take previous games into consideration.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the data set they race it all on, and then you just feed into, on average, what gets you to a certain score after a certain game. I still remember the greatest one of all, of course, is South Africa having to come back out for 1 ball, off which they required 22 runs at the SCG, and everyone just staring at the scoreboard going, I don't understand what's happening here. Very unlucky.
You did 2 washouts this year in the Big Bash, didn't you?
In the Big Bash, we had 2 washouts.
Is 2020 cricket Duckworth Lewis as well, or is Duckworth Lewis only one-day cricket?
And there was that other one day, wasn't there? Was it against South Africa, who had the sheet of paper in the pocket of numbers after each over? So it was just 41, 138. You know, boom, 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 boom. As long as you 2 guys don't get out. And the number they had written was the number they needed to get 1 more than. So they'd got to exactly the number on the bit of paper, walked off going, how good are we? Lost by a run.
Well, their stats guy got sacked.
Yep.
We would be remiss to not mention the tournament favourites. India are paying $2.50. Next is Australia at $5, England $7, Pakistan $7, etc., down to Bangladesh, who are paying $126 to 1. Maybe worth a little bet.
Yeah, a bit of a flutter on the bankies there.
India are, as I said, red-hot favourites. Their squad is stacked. They just demolished England. Moe, do you think they are rightful favourites, and are they your pick to win the tournament?
They are rightful favourites. I would love Bumrah to be playing, to really, double down on that and say, they're unbeatable. But I think whilst Bumrah's not in the team, there is hope for the opposition.
Okay.
And I think if there was, Virat Kohli is just an absolute champion of the game, and for a while there was probably the best player in all 3 forms at the one time. And there's a handful of people who've ever been able to say they could do that. There was something about him in the last, in the end of that last series here, where it was a little bit. I don't mean to patronise him, but the last thing he would care about is my opinions on anything. But it was a little bit sad to see a former champion of the game possibly not getting what he wanted on the pitch, and so just turning into some sort of pantomime villain puffing his chest. That's just not his thing. If it's fascinating, like a team like that reveres a fellow team member as a superstar in a way that only a handful of teams. If he struggles a little bit, I think the ability of that to sort of snowball through the team is more than if Adam Gilchrist wasn't hitting him as well as we might have hoped in a certain tournament a few years ago or something. Yeah,
quite possibly. But I do think that Indian team, I think he started this culture of, I guess, athleticism and fitness and like raising their expectations of what each individual expects out of themselves when they take onto the cricket field. And because of what he started, I think whether...
can cover for him if he's a bit off.
I do actually feel like if he's not... what he does is he's got that experience, or the MS Dhoni effect, especially in chases where, he could bat in any situation of a game in a one-day game. If he comes in the 12th over and the team's 2 for whatever, you're like, well, Virat could well just do this by himself. He doesn't actually need anyone else in the team. He might just, as long as someone's standing up at the other end, I'll get us home. And, they also had MS Dhoni, especially when chasing, later on in the innings. As long as he was around there, they were going to manage that chase. So he's got that experience, or that wealth of, his own data and information to figure, or almost automatically just figure out what needs to be done in a one-day game, which probably needs to be done more so than in a T20. So that experience is going to be irreplaceable for sure. But I do think the Indian batters especially, and their spin bowlers, but their batters just have a new level of skill and shots that, other than maybe England, there aren't many other teams that can match it.
Just seeing someone give Hugo the finger was quite enjoyable. India, the favourites. I think the other thing about this tournament that I wanted to call out is it's probably the last big one-day tournament where the big 4 batters of the last decade, Kohli, who we mentioned, Smith, Williamson and Root, will all be in that tournament. Are we expecting that those 4 guys will kind of separate themselves from the pack as they have for the last decade and lead their teams into the finals stage of the tournament?
I think that I'm not sure they'll separate themselves from the pack, only because they're all middle order batters. Or not.
Virat is still the second favourite to get the most runs of the tournament after his teammate Shubman Gill. I was very interested by that.
So I do still think that the leading run scorers are going to come from the top 3, as almost in all white ball games, that tends to happen. But I guess I'm assuming Kane's probably either going to bat 3 or open. I'm not sure exactly, but I'm sure they're going to have great tournaments. It's just whether they're leading the runs or not. I don't think so, or they're not going to be leading by so far. Maybe a Rohit or a Shubman Gill, as you mentioned there.
Do you reckon we could see Smithy open the batting?
I hope so. What we've seen here in T20 cricket in Australia in the Big Bash, it's just been unmatched. I haven't seen anything or anyone open the batting in limited overs cricket like he's been batting in the Big Bash in the last 3 years. I mean, they're experimenting with Jake Fraser, who probably doesn't have a huge amount of runs on the board in this format. Why wouldn't they experiment with one of the greatest batsmen of all time at the top of the order?
I agree. I think Smithy opening the batting would be awesome. And I completely forgot the last thing I was going to say. That is because we are quickly running out of time. But I did want to call out the fact that there's a huge round of Shield cricket and then domestic one-day games on the weekend. We'll do a big wrap of that next week, Moe. But may as well get your view on it quickly. How are the Blues shaping? Big games against Victoria, starting tomorrow at the SCG, and then I think Sunday, the one-day is at Cricket Central, where you will be, of course, featuring in the game.
Yeah, it is a big week for New South Wales, and it's a big week for all the states across the board, other than maybe South Australia, who are, in the Shield competition anyway. Almost you could safely say that they're gonna be playing in the final. But the other, from 2nd to 6th, there's only 4 points that separate the rest. So it's a very tight season. We're playing against our nemesis at the moment. Well, Victoria have had, definitely had our measure over the last sort of 7 or 8 years.
Who do you prefer to beat, Victoria or the Thunder?
The Thunder. But still, that's also probably because I haven't beaten Victoria for 8 years, so I can't really, not in 4-day cricket anyway. So, I think it's a huge game for New South Wales coming up, and it's a huge game for Victoria as well, because we're all, with only 2 or 3 games to go in the season. This week is so important. And
just put your arm around Sam and tell him to make the runs before he gets out, not from in the change room. Once he's done, you're going to be fine.
Uncharacteristically, Sam, he did seem very confident when I ran into him before.
That's because the last thing he remembers was those 6 sixes. So I just told him to go out there, start charging their opening bowler and hitting them for 6 like he did to me there.
Adam, are you nuffy enough to sit in the ladies' stand with me tomorrow for the first session of the New South Wales Victoria Sheffield Shield game?
Try and stop me. I'll bring the jacket down. I might try and get Sammy K's signature on it. He's the latest addition to the jacket. We'll have a great day.
Josh Inglis, actually the latest addition.
There you go.
We'll have to get him. But Sammy K would be the signature of the month at the moment. Moe, probably my favourite guest so far, I think. All your
Definitely the
ex-cricketing
funniest.
mates, they make me feel a little bit too intimidated.
Very
It's been
awkward
great.
question to ask Mo at the end when I'm sitting here, but I'll take it.
I think I do it every time, pretty much.
He does, Adam. After every episode, he always asks me what I thought of that episode.
It's one of my signatures. It's like how I say obviously when I'm leading into any new question. But Adam, thank you so much for coming on. It's been good fun. And I could tell
Obviously,
Mo, you
it's
really
been a
enjoyed
blast,
it.
mate.
Boys, Champions Trophy, very exciting. But just after that, Australia go to the West Indies. And we are very excited to announce that the Fanatics tours to the West Indies go on sale at thefanatics.com. It's the first Aussie tour to the Caribbean in a decade. And there's going to be tests in Barbados, Grenada, and Jamaica. You two boys were speaking before, both big fans of cricket in the West Indies.
They would be inflating and testing those big spa pools that you can sit in, drink a rum and watch the cricket. They'd be testing those right now. I said to Sri Lanka, I would love to go and watch cricket in the West Indies. They just the feel, the vibe of it, the chance that you're then just going to spot some absolute superstar. Oh, that's Colin Croft over there or what? Oh, bring it on.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, the only tours I've ever been to the West Indies on were limited overs tours. So you're hopping from island to island. You never get a chance to settle, to actually unpack your bag and go, I'm going to go see what Barbados has to offer. But for a test tour, it's the one place I haven't got to go and tour on a test tour where you can actually unpack your stuff,
Food,
make yourself
the
comfortable.
Nightlife.
Yeah.
Oh.
And what a place to go, because I've heard so many good stories, but because when you go over on limited overs tours, it's just, you fly, you play, you leave, you fly to the next city. So you don't really get a chance to take in the cities or the islands. But I've heard Barbados is amazing. And I haven't been to Grenada before. I've been to Barbados, but as I mentioned, only for sort of 3 days at a time. So on a test tour where you get a sort of 8 or 9 day trip, I couldn't think of many better places to go.
I've actually heard that Wazza is considering flying you and I over there for the tour. We'll do some live chin music action from Barbados,
In
Grenada,
the spa.
and Jamaica.
You've showered together before this one. Let's hop in the spa and chat.
Absolutely. I think there's a good golf course there at Barbados as well that was talking about putting us up in.
If you would like to come with us on the tour of the West Indies, get on the tour at www.thefanatics.com. If you want more chin music action, you know where to find us. Hugo, whack it at the bottom there as always. It's been great fun. Episode 12 in the can. Thank you, Adam Spencer. Catch you later, everyone. Cheers.
Well, there it was, ladies and gentlemen. Yet another episode of Chin Music. If you enjoyed it as much as we did, please hit the like and subscribe button somewhere under here, and we'll see you on the next one.
Oh, yes, Moe.